The Optima Hotel in Kharkiv is a significant place for the Kharkiv Press Club. Before the war, bloggers and journalists often used to stay there. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the hotel, which located in a quiet center, gradually became more and more deserted. On October 6, 2023, a Russian missile hit the road near the hotel, damaging the surrounding high-rise buildings. And this is how the hotel looks today, where the first presentation of the Kharkiv Region Destroyed but Unbroken project took place. Then, in May 2023, journalists from the Kharkiv Press Club met with residents of Slobozhanshchyna. They explained their goal of producing 60 documentaries in Ukrainian and English about the consequences of Russian aggression in the region. The team had to inform the world about the war in Ukraine and collect memories of witnesses about the crimes.
I can't. It must have been hail or something like that. Or a cluster shell. And this is how I feel about these people.
Here's what project manager Alexander Shvets tells about the press club goal.
Our guys who had been working with us for 2 years in the Hamada Group project, they joined the army and went to war. One of them has been wounded. And I was thinking, what will journalists do? What is their mission in this war? We decided that we should keep the Hamada Group network, but some new projects needed to be done. And I said that my team and I would decide how to do it, and that's how the idea was born. And so it began to be quietly realized. This idea was highly supported by my journalistic colleagues, Kharkiv journalists, TV journalists. These crimes committed by the occupiers in Ukraine must be recorded.
The house is destroyed and burning.
The whole world should see them. That's why these films are in English and Ukrainian. They must reach the judges of international courts.
The project's film shows events from different locations in the region. This difficult task required high skills and courage from the journalists. It is not easy to get witnesses to recall things they would have preferred to forget as soon as possible. This is how Lydia Derienko, the character of the Dead's Trail movie, recalls the history of the first days of the war, when her husband was killed in the shelling.
10 days later, I got a call from the police. They said there was less shelling now and the police were able to come to our neighborhood. The rescuers cut out a piece of the door. They went into the apartment, and there he was, lying there, started decomposing. You'll have a hard time imagining what the smell of death is.
Russian troops came, destroyed everything.
The neighbor, the one who was killed, had 6 children. My father was killed by Russian shelling, and now we are left without a father.
I realized that the war had started because I could see rockets flying from Belgorod.
I say, Talia, what's there? And he replies, it seems like nothing. Later, in the hospital, we were told that there wasn't one eye, that his jaw was completely blown out, that the entire left side was completely bruised.
As you know, crimes have no purpose. All crimes are aimed at the destruction of Ukraine and all its inhabitants. I think this is the main goal of the Russian invaders.
This is a crime against humanity, against the whole of Ukraine, against people in general.
Every day we see a lot of information about a lot of losses, some destructions. We save it all in our memory. And we keep these emotions, and these emotions are what we are trying to capture and create the chronicle in our war.
The 60 films of the project are different in their contents. They are united into a single cycle by an artistic concept called sleety scars.
The war left scars on all of us.
How safe was it to implement the project? Journalists from well-known Ukrainian and international publications stayed at the Kharkiv Palace Hotel, as also at Optima Hotel, and Russian missiles were fired at the hotel with the only purpose of scaring reports. The team of Kharkiv Press Club held presentations in each of these hotels and showed their films.
Foreign journalists very often stayed in both hotels that were hit. Therefore, perhaps the Russians wanted to intimidate foreign journalists who are in the territory of the region. Since they all communicate with each other, hitting hotels where there are a lot of journalists may indicate that journalists were the Russians' target in these missile attacks.
The films of the Kharkiv Press Club not only record the consequences of Russian aggression in the Kharkiv region, they uncover the essence of Russian policy, the destruction of all living and intangible things in Ukraine. This was rightly noted by the head of the journalists group, Marina Nikolaeva.
It is really important for us to find the cases where there are signs of this fascist mode, that they are practicing cultural genocide, eco-genocide, intentional shooting or intentional punishment, or intentional torture of civilians on the territory of Ukraine.
There is no reason to explain the intentional destruction of the Hyry Skovoroda Museum, just like the destruction of the architectural heritage of Slobozhanshchyna. This is how museum workers and architects explain the conducts of the Russians.
At night, around 11 at night, the whole village heard an explosion. The windows flew out, my door opened. Literally in a second, my daughter-in-law jumped up and said, "The museum is on fire." She ran outside and saw what was on this side. My son was on duty at the museum that night. The feeling cannot be expressed. Everything was mixed at once. Pain for my son. Pain for the museum. Ran to the museum. When she reached the turn, she saw that there was a strong fire. So they aimed at the museum and wanted to destroy the museum directly. I think they aimed at the museum. The elephant was heard from Russia. That Skovoroda is a Russian philosopher, but we know that he's a Ukrainian philosopher born in Chernuki. And his very spirit, he himself is Ukrainian by spirit. I don't know what to call it. It's a crime, and you have to answer for crimes.
And when such objects are destroyed, the history is destroyed in general, as proof of our existence in the past. That is, the narratives they promote, that we are one fraternal nation. These narratives will be much easier to prove when we completely lose our historic environment. Therefore, we must realize that in addition to our hot front, where the guys are protecting us now, there is another front that we must protect and stand for our own history and preserve these evidences that we still have.
The evidence that was collected is history. Each film recreates the tragedy of individuals or entire families. The films document the irreparable damage dealt to the future of Ukraine. The heads of the press club's reporters groups talk about their own motivation for collecting these facts into documentaries.
At the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I survived the occupation. I personally witnessed Russian crimes. I saw what they were doing and how they were affecting people. Unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to tell anyone for more than 6 months not to cover those events. When I got out of that situation, I realized that I would not stand outside. I will tell and document these crimes. The only way, in my opinion, is journalism and these films. It is very important what we document and then show you, because everyone who sees this film will tell their friends, and their friends will tell their friends that such a crime happened, that it is documented, and that we remember it.
Цим я займаюся для того, щоб мої діти, діти моїх друзів, моїх однолітків
I try to do this because I want my children and the children of my friends and peers to remember and never forget that this country has never been friendly to us. They come and destroy us endlessly from century to century. And that's why I think my colleagues are covering events, practically coming to places where, they've been murdered, raped, tortured.
And I want us to record this, pass it on to all our children and Ukrainians, and preserve it thanks to these movies. The project's movies do not leave anyone indifferent. every Ukrainian was affected by this war. Some people lost their relatives, some lost their homes, others lost their jobs or the opportunity to live in their villages because of shelling, mining, and destruction. The film Burned Life shows incredible people's grief. Several generations of people, parents, children, grandchildren were burned alive because of the Russian crime.
When I checked the telegram, information about the dead had already been posted. 2 adults and 3 children. I stood here until they showed me the bodies, until they were taken out and taken away. I have not seen the remains. I was not shown anything. I don't know how I will live without them now. How much more blood do they need? How many more deaths of innocent children do they need?
Thanks to our damn neighbor state. I hate them.
It's extremely difficult to understand the depth of this tragedy. The film The Last Book of the writer Volodymyr Vakulenko tells about the mystical link between the writers Volodymyr Vakulenko and Victoria Amelina, who were mercilessly killed by the Russians.
It's a terrible pity. A man has died.
Back and through their curls you could hear, "Everything will be Ukraine. I believe in victory."
Vakulenko managed to hide his diary, which he kept during the occupation, and ordered his father to give it to the Ukrainian military. His family never saw Volodymyr alive again. Vakulenko's diary was found by the writer Victoria Amelina, who was part of the Truth Hound search group documenting the crimes of the Russian military.
Was sure that his native Izium would be liberated and that his diary would be found. He did not say, "If our people come, you will give it back."
Victoria Amelina became a close person to Volodymyr Vakulenko's parents. She was magnetically drawn to his Kapitovka village. On one of her last visits, she gave her mother a book for children, but did not have time to sign it. On June 27, Victoria Amelina came under rocket fire in Kramatorsk. She passed away on July 1, 2023. It is symbolic that the writer Volodymyr Vakulenko was born on this day in 1972.
I think that everyone should watch these films. Not only the younger generation, but also older people. To understand that Russia, which came to the territory of Ukraine, is doing evil.
And we need to create a bank of crimes committed by Russia against Ukraine. Ukrainians are suffering from Russian aggression every day. People are dying, losing their homes and jobs, and getting psychologically damaged. Ukrainians are being tortured and killed. Many people are missing. The surviving prisoners of Kosaka Lopan, Vovchansk, and Balaklia, the characters in our films, tell about their torture in the detention chambers.
They were not LNR people, they were Russians. And according to their uniforms, it was special forces. They were called special troops. They put him on his knees, and with his legs, breeches, stood on his muscles. Twisted. There was horror.
My daughter had her hair torn out, her head pierced, her nails torn out. And my daughter-in-law was also blue. They tortured me and my son with electricity, that's for sure. My daughter did not confess. She said, "Mom, they hit me 74 times on the head."
The movies do not leave anyone untouched, because every Ukrainian has suffered in this war. Some have lost their relatives, some have lost their homes or jobs, and our films are about this. Civilians are suffering from Russian aggression every day. People, animals, and the environment are dying. Kharkiv Press Club is recording the chronicle of the Great War. Unfortunately, changes in the country and consciousness are made through pain and sacrifice. These are the scars that Russia leaves behind, but these scars harden the nation of free Ukrainians.
Мій внук от підросте, він буде дивитися зовсім другими очами, тому що йому зараз.
My grandson will grow up. He will see things with completely different eyes. He is 12 years old now, and when he is 15, it will be completely different. This is very good work. I am grateful to the journalists who walked through the ruins and scars and told us about it in detail.